And what I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe from some of its most fundamental values, values shared with the United States of America. Now, I was struck that a former European commissioner went on television recently and sounded delighted that the Romanian government had just annulled an entire election. He warned that if things don't go to plan, the very same thing could happen in Germany, too.
The nation of Germany has been in the news quite a bit of late, and for all the right reasons. Last Friday, Vice President J.D. Vance spoke at the Munich Security Council and delivered what Foreign Policy magazine is calling the speech that stunned Europe. Vance excoriated European leaders for not just failing their people, but for being, in effect, at war with their people, deliberately silencing the mass criticism of their failed liberal policies. Vance made it clear that the true enemy to Europe is not Russia, or China for that matter. The enemy is from within, an out-of-touch ruling elite that despises its own people and the once vibrant, flourishing European cultures that those people represent. And as if that didn't shock the ruling elite enough, Vance, in effect, openly endorsed the infamous, the notorious AfD, the Alternative for Deutschland party, Germany's Patriot Party, their mega party that wants to make Europe great again, which the European elite have done everything in their power to marginalize, even threatening to ban them. So what does all of this mean, especially for Germany's national elections coming up this weekend? Well, I'm so excited to talk once again to one of my favorite guests, the CEO of Arktos Publishing, Konstantin von Hofmeister. Konstantin is an expert in geopolitics and is coming to us live from Germany to give us a firsthand, on-the-ground assessment of some of these extraordinary political developments. Konstantin, welcome, my friend. I mean, what amazing times we're living in.
Well, thank you very much for having me again. I really appreciate it. And I absolutely agree. We live in a fascinating timeline. Like, I'm very excited to be alive right now because every day there are more positive news coming our way, basically, for our people and basically our movement, conservative people.
Absolutely. Arktos has been been publishing works on this that have been, I mean, my heavens, going back a couple of centuries, recognizing the end of the modern order and the rise of a new civilizationalist order. And we're actually watching it play out right in front of our very eyes. I wanted to start off, if I may, with a great piece that you wrote on your Substack. And I encourage everyone to click on the link below to subscribe to Konstantin's Substack, as I do. Just click on the link below to subscribe. But you wrote a piece commenting on Vance's Munich speech entitled Vance the Hammer. And if I may, I just wanted to read an excerpt. I featured this in a video I did the other day, but it's so good. In Munich, a new alignment is spoken into existence. The Americans, with their raw candor, are pushing a simple truth. The days of consensus are over. Vance does not plead, nor does he posture. He demands. He demands that Europe wake up, that she take her own side in the battle for her soul, and that she reject the death spiral of mass immigration and the imposed morality of an exhausted liberalism. He says to Germany, stop fearing your own people. Stop treating them like dangerous children to be controlled and silenced. Listen to them. Work with them. This is not a conference. This is not a debate. This is the moment when the mask slips and the battle lines are drawn. Vance, the hammer of the new era, makes it clear. America is no longer the enforcer of European delusions. The order of the past is crumbling, and in its place, something harder, something truer, something real is emerging. Beautifully written. What, Konstantin, what precisely is this order that's crumbling? And what is this harder, truer, more real order that's rising?
Well, I think the order that is crumbling is the liberal order. And the liberal order was basically buried with the election of Donald Trump, because a lot of the European elites, I would even say the majority of the European elites, expected Kamala Harris to be elected, and they were hoping for Kamala to be elected, because under Biden, the United States was a close ally with the European Union because they both shared the same liberal leftist values, basically. For example, as we know now, because Elon Musk propagated it, there's a lot of censorship going on in Europe. So in Europe, we don't have the same freedom of speech that you have in the United States. I mean, in Germany, like the police can raid your house if you insult a politician, or if you spread what they call fake news, or if you use what they call hate speech, even though it's never really defined what hate speech really is. So people can basically come into your house in the middle of the night, like armed policemen, and they can confiscate your laptop and your telephone for commenting on certain posts on Facebook or X, which is outrageous in my opinion. Yes, but I think the Biden regime, they actually supported these measures, and I think they even condoned them. And I believe that if Kamala had been elected, she probably would have tried to introduce similar measures in the United States. Yes, so I think you were lucky, very, very lucky that Kamala didn't get elected, right? So Donald Trump, together with Elon Musk, the new administration in the United States, they are real champions of free speech, as J.D. Vance demonstrated in his speech in Munich, when he pretty much lambasted the European elites for betraying the common values of the West, meaning freedom of expression and fair elections.
Yeah.
Because J.D. Vance criticized the German government for what he called erecting a firewall. And what is the firewall? Yes, so the firewall is pretty much what the established German parties use to disassociate themselves from the AfD, the Alternative for Germany, which is the only patriotic opposition party in Germany. And it is quite popular. It is estimated to get around 20 to 25% in the upcoming election on the 23rd of February. So, I mean, every fourth German voter supports the AfD. Now, the problem is, in Germany, you have a parliamentary system, yes, unlike the United States. So what happens is you have like a bunch of parties, right? Like you have the Christian Democratic Union, you have the Social Democrats, you have the Green Party, you have the Free Democrats, and then you have the AfD. And so even if the AfD got, for example, 30% of the votes in the upcoming election, in the German system, they would not be able to rule at all. Yes, because all the other parties would basically enter into a coalition against the AfD. Yes. And and they call this the firewall, and they're very proud of it. Like the German establishment, the German media, and the spokespeople of the German parties, they call themselves Democrats when they speak about themselves, and they exclude the AfD, insinuating that the AfD is somehow anti-democratic or not democratic, which is completely not true, because the AfD is basically a libertarian party.
Yeah. Yeah.
With patriotic sentiments and common sense, right? And
Right.
as Elon Musk
Right.
so aptly stated.
In many respects, I think they're basically an Elon Musk party, right? They want
Well, they
closed
are,
borders,
right.
and they want smaller government and more
Absolutely.
liberty and more freedom. Yeah, basically that's it. Yeah.
Well, that's
Yeah.
it. And they're actually advocating freedom of speech. Like freedom of speech has to come back to Germany. This is one of the AfD's campaign slogans. And it is quite amazing to observe the leftist liberals who are now in charge in Germany, in power, somehow making excuses, right? Like after Vance gave a speech, of course, they were all like outraged, yes. Like,
Yes.
how dare this, American vice president tell us Germans that there is no freedom in our country? This is not true. So you have Friedrich Merz. He's the leader of the Christian Democratic Union, and he's a chancellor candidate in the upcoming election. And his party, the Christian Democratic Union, is projected to get about 30%. So it will
Okay.
probably be the strongest party, and he
Yeah.
will most likely be the next chancellor. Yes.
Yeah.
And well, he was interviewed after Vance gave a speech, and he said, "Well, I'm paraphrasing, right? So he
Yeah.
basically said that this is completely not true. We have free speech in Germany, but of course, in Germany we have a bit of a different system. So while we have free speech, and then he actually used the phrase independent courts, as independent courts can go after people who use hate speech or who spread fake news or offensive speech, right? So basically what he was saying is that in Germany we have free speech, comma, except blah 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 blah, right?
Right.
So
Right.
pretty much proving JD Vance's point, right? Because that's the
Yes.
whole point
Yeah.
that JD
Yeah.
Vance was making. The point is you cannot have free speech with the phrase except after it, right? Because then it's
Yeah.
not free
Yeah.
speech.
Right. Right. Right.
Yes, I
Right.
mean, because
Right.
if you have, as soon as you have exceptions,
That it's not free. Exactly. Yeah.
then
Yeah.
then you're not free, and
Yeah.
and
No, you
I
got it.
believe this. So people in Germany, they're not free because they're not free to speak their mind. Yes,
Hmm.
and this is
Yeah.
why Vance said it is not really democratic to have
Right.
censorship and
Right.
restrictions on free speech. And Elon Musk specified this in the last couple of days. He pretty much said, like, people really can form their own opinion if they can't listen to everybody's opinions, because certain opinions are forbidden in Germany. I mean, the current chancellor of Germany is Olaf Scholz. He's a social democrat. His party is basically sinking rapidly in the polls. He's very, very unpopular now. Yes, and I mean, several months ago at a press conference, he said that, of course, certain opinions are forbidden in Germany,
Yeah. Right.
like matter of factly, as if it's completely reasonable, right?
Every
So of
doesn't
course,
your doesn't
naturally.
your government do that? Yeah. Yeah. Right. Right.
But if the leader of your government says something like this, how can you possibly say that you have free speech? It's crazy, right?
Now,
So,
now is Merz is he planning on coalitioning with the SPD?
and he actually said this several days ago in an interview, because there was sort of like a chancellor candidate duel on German television where it was Olaf Scholz, Friedrich Merz, and Habeck from the Green Party, and
Mhm.
Alice Weidel from the AfD. Like all four of them were like sort of arguing on public television, like you have in the United States, like a presidential debate, basically, very similar. And I think it's very similar in the US. It's usually you don't really have a level playing field, because the moderators, they're usually
Yeah.
very anti-Trump, and it's very noticeably so. I watched the American presidential debates, and it was very clear that they sided with Kamala, right? And they were
Right.
really, really,
Right. Of course. Yeah. They're all liberals.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
of
Yeah.
course. I mean, in Germany, it's the same. They don't even pretend to be objective, So they treat
Right.
Alice Weidel from the AfD very unfairly. The other people get more speaking time. She's constantly interrupted rudely, etc. But anyway, I mean, during this duel, Friedrich Merz was actually asked, like, what will happen if you win the presidential election? What will your party do? Because you'll have 30%, which is not enough to rule, right? Because to rule, you need
Right.
more than 50%, right? So he will
Right.
have to enter into a coalition with other parties to reach the 50%. And he actually said, yeah, Social Democrats are an option. The Green Party is an option. Yes,
Oh my goodness. Wow.
he again said, but I want to
Anybody but
yeah,
AFD, right?
absolutely. He said, I want to adamantly state that the AfD is out of the question. There will be no coalition or even any kind of collaboration with the AfD. Yes, even though
Unbelievable.
this is
Absolutely.
what more than a fourth of German voters want this basically.
Right,
Yes.
right, exactly, exactly, and it's only growing. The more they do the firewall, the more popular they seem to get. Right, they came into the Bundestag 2017. That was Angela Merkel's last election. So they came in with, I think, 13% of the vote back in 2017. Now it looks like they're almost double that. 20 low, as you said, sort of 20 low 20%. They're only getting more popular.
Well, you have to understand, and I would also like to tell this to your listeners, that the AfD will basically become the second strongest party in Germany. I mean, this is already a given, right? I mean,
That's already given.
yeah, it's a given. The Christian Democratic Union will get about 30%, the AfD between 20 and 25%, but all the other parties will have less than 20%. It's already projected, right? Like the Social Democrats, maybe 15, 16%, the Green Party, I think 12%, and then you have like the crazy leftists. They will get 9% for some reason now. Yes. So very bizarre. But to go back to your original question real quick. So the old order that is crumbling is a liberal order. It's what Biden and Kamala represented, because this order is gone, at least in the United States, because you have a completely new America right now. I mean, not only domestically, but also on the international stage,
Yeah.
I might add.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think this new America is completely incompatible with liberal Europe. Yes. And this is what Vance, I think, expressed very, very clearly in his Munich speech. I mean, I applaud Vance. I agreed with every single thing he said. He's 100% right. But of course, the Europeans are completely shocked. And ever since his speech, like the newspapers, all the websites, journals, online forums are full of discussions about it, like outrage. What can we do?
Right.
It's like a divorce between Europe and the United States. We have to go our own way. We can't rely on our American brother anymore because he's being led astray by, I know, right-wing extremists in the administration and so on.
But this is what's so fascinating. And again, you wrote about this in your latest book on multipolarity, which again people can get just by clicking on the link below. But I mean, it seems like these European liberals. I remember there was a book that came out. It was called Anthony Giddens: The Last Modernists, and Anthony Giddens is a British globalist scholar. He's kind of the architect of the third way for Tony Blair and all that. And there was a fascinating scholar from Texas A&M, Stepan Mostrovich, who wrote this book, Anthony Giddens, The Last Modernist, basically the last, almost like a Francis Fukuyama kind of holdout saying, oh, no, the future is modernity, the future is globalism, blah, blah, blah. And it was, of course, this book just raked him through the coals, as it were. It seems to me that the EU, the bullies in Brussels, they're like the last liberals. They're isolating themselves. They've lost America. They've lost Russia. They've lost China. They've lost India. They've lost the Middle East. They've lost the entire continent of Africa. I mean, it's like, they've lost everything, it seems.
Well, the European Union is becoming irrelevant, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, internationally, because nobody really cares what they have to say anymore, because they don't have much influence in the world. I mean, at least not as they used to. And nobody's taking them seriously anymore. I mean, the Europeans don't have a military to speak of. I mean, they're completely dependent on the American military, and they have been dependent on the American military for decades. I mean, ever since the end of World War II, basically.
It's basically an occupied territory at this point.
Well, occupied territory is correct. I mean, especially Germany, you have hundreds and thousands of US troops on German soil. And the Americans have nuclear weapons on German soil, which only the Americans have access to, not the German government, of course. And at the same time, though, I think the German elites, they welcome this American presence on the European continent because it saves them a lot of expenses, right? Because I mean, maintaining a military that is capable of defending the European continent is very, very, very costly, obviously, right? But the Europeans are basically not paying for it. The American taxpayers paying for European defense, basically. I mean, I just shared like an image of even contributions to NATO. I mean, it's completely uneven. The United States contributes like 5 times as much as
Right.
anybody else in NATO. So basically, the United States is paying for European defense, and I think the new Trump administration is sick of it. To be honest, they don't
Hmm.
want to do it anymore, and they don't see why they should, especially
Right.
if the new America does not even share the same values as liberal
Right.
Europe. And
Right.
I think this is where it's heading. I really think that the United States is slowly but surely dissociating itself from the European Union. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think the
Yeah.
divorce is quite real.
Did you? We were talking a little bit about this before the interview. Did you ever imagine? You've been a student of geopolitics now for decades. Did you ever imagine the White House endorsing the AFD? I mean, we're talking. I mean, it was a tacit endorsement, right, with Vice President Vance. Maybe you could talk a little bit about just
I'm
the
I'm I'm completely flabbergasted, to be honest. Like sometimes I believe I'm in the Matrix, right? I mean everything is like so unreal that this can't be real. Like you have the vice president of the United States, like I mean indirectly but basically directly endorsing the AFD in in a speech in front of all the important politicians of the West, basically. Yes, I mean, Vance didn't even speak about Ukraine much in his speech. He pretty much only endorsed the AFD, criticized the Europeans for cracking down on patriots' right to speak freely, and then he left the stage, basically. And which was marvelous. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. Like, wow. I was floored when I watched it live. Like, I was in the car, like, watching it on my phone, like wow, yeah. I mean, if I hadn't been sitting, I probably would have fallen over. That's how great it was. I was so shocked, to be honest. Yes. So yeah. I mean, and then I mean, then you have Elon Musk constantly talking about the
yes,
AFD, like
yes,
non-stop basically, and he's
yeah.
basically in the Trump administration as well.
Hmm.
So I mean,
Yeah.
and then Vance retweeting Musk and vice versa, and then
Hmm.
Trump himself even commenting. So I think it's very clear where the sympathies of the Trump administration lie, definitely with the AfD, because when Vance went to Germany, when he visited Munich, he didn't even bother to meet with the current chancellor of Germany, Olaf
Unbelievable.
Scholz, the one who's actually in power right now. Because I mean, I read that one of Vance's aides basically just said, "Yeah, we don't need to meet with Olaf Scholz because he's not going to be chancellor for much longer anyway," right? So, but instead, after the speech, he actually met with Alice Weidel, the leader of the AfD, in his hotel, and they talked about different topics, including the firewall, freedom of speech, and the Ukraine conflict. So, I mean, the AfD's policies and the AfD's ideas and the AfD's vision is pretty much completely in line with the Trump administration. And the Trump administration, of course, realizes this. And I think they want to boost the AfD as much as possible for this particular reason, because they're ideological twins almost, the AfD
Yes.
and the Trump administration. And they
Yeah.
know that the AfD is not some some marginal splinter party. It is the second strongest party in the country with almost 30%. And I mean, in some states, and one state in East Germany, it's even the strongest party, yes, with almost
Is that
40%.
Saxony? Is that
And Thuringia, actually, it's
is
the
it
strong.
Thuringia?
Yeah,
Yep. Yep.
Thuringia. In
Thuringia.
Saxony, it's the second strongest, and Brandenburg is the second strongest, but Thuringia is actually the number one party.
Yeah, they won the local election there. Remember that?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I
Huge.
mean, it has a lot of influence, but the German government and the establishment, by hook or by
Yes.
crook, they refuse to
Yeah.
work together with the AfD.
Right.
So I don't know how much longer they can keep up this so-called firewall, or if it will eventually break. I think it might.
It
Yes.
seems like it does. I mean, they tried it in the Scandinavian countries. Certainly with the Sweden Democrats and Jimmy Åkesson, they kept him out of power. I mean, you probably remember Constantine when they had to have a snap election. This was a few years back. A snap election in Sweden. Their liberal democratic government fell apart. They had snap elections, and the Sweden Democrats did better than they did the previous election by a few points. I think they hit the 20% mark or something. But because of this firewall, same kind of thing, because of this firewall, they formed the same coalition all over again. I mean, the people were livid. They couldn't believe it. The same prime minister, the same government came in place just for this firewall. But eventually they gave in. And now the moderates, the center right or whatever, are now in a coalition government with the Sweden Democrats there. They've done it in Finland. They're more or less doing it in Italy, although now the Brothers of Italy have taken over and they're the number one party. But it seems like it's happening, but it does take time, doesn't it?
Well, it takes a very long time. I mean, in Germany, this firewall nonsense has been going on for years and years. And I mean, I think it will take a few more years for things to change. That's my prediction. Like I said, the AfD will become second strongest party. But I think, the Christian Democratic Union will enter into coalition with crazy leftists like the Green Party and Social Democrats. So will be business as usual, right? I mean, in terms of tackling important issues like mass immigration and immigrant crime, which is rampant in Germany. I mean, like almost daily you hear of instances of people being knifed, shot, blown up, murdered, raped, etc.
Yeah, but you better not comment on it. That's right.
Yeah, you can comment on it. You can say it happened, but you have to be very careful how you phrase it, of course, right? I mean, I myself have to be careful when I speak about this topic, but I can't really hide it anymore because this kind of crime it is now so widespread, and a lot of it is covered up, in my opinion. But they can't cover up all of them, right? Especially the big ones, like the one that happened almost on the same day when Vance was in Munich, the terrorist attack, where a woman and their 2-year-old daughter died, by the way, right? When one of them, like one of the refugees, so-called refugees, whose status was actually denied, he should have been deported, but he wasn't deported, right? Because the system doesn't work. Right. And he rammed this car into a crowd of people, killing a mother and her child, basically, and injuring dozens of others.
Dozens of people, I saw that.
Yeah. I mean, these events happen almost, on a monthly basis now, right? I mean,
and I mean, it's very, for me, just even very visceral, very personal. My son was studying in Europe last semester, and his favorite place that he went to, of all the places he visited, was the Munich Christmas market. And of course, you had the terrible terrorist attack. What was just a week or two before Christmas at I forget which Christmas market. It wasn't Munich, but
it was a Christmas market in Magdeburg. Where the terrorist attack happened.
Yeah, I mean, when you know your own blood is there, just trying to enjoy the beauties of Europe, the cultural richness of Europe, and then it's getting violated like that. And of course you have the massive the gang rape scandal going on in the UK right now that was basically covered up for 30 years, and you have possibly hundreds of thousands of victims. I mean, it's just insane. I don't know how they think they could continue to go with this. How did you put it? Basically, this charade, this delusions. How long they can enforce these European delusions, European elite delusions?
Well, it's a complete mystery to me. I don't think it's sustainable for much longer because more and more people are getting visibly upset about it. And I mean, this is why the AfD was able to win over 10 points, almost 10 points since the last election. And I think this will grow because it is not just ethnic Germans that are now voting for the AfD. I mean, you have a lot of, non-ethnic Germans or even non-Europeans that have been citizens, for decades or for generations in Germany. A lot of them are voting for the AfD now.
Right.
And they're very vocal about it, even on X. Yes, which completely belies the mainstream propaganda line that the AfD is somehow racist or white supremacist, because it's completely not true, obviously, right? And a lot of people believe that the AFD, once in power, wants to deport all foreigners, basically, which is also a lie because it's not true. The AFD is not against all immigration, it's just against uncontrolled mass immigration, or as J.D. Vance said in his speech, unvetted immigration, basically letting in
Yeah.
people where you have no idea who they are, where are they from, what did they
Right.
do, you know, and
Right.
and a lot of them have psychiatric problems, apparently, a very large
Sure.
percentage, because I mean, this is
Well,
what
they're
they usually.
unvetted.
I mean,
They're
this is
unvetted, of course. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
often, I mean, sorry, after these attacks, they say, well, you know, he had there are psychiatric issues. It's not really their fault. They need treatment. You know, after they kill 2-year-olds, right, or scores of people. Well, this is the problem, right? I mean, there's nothing. I mean, the AfD never said that immigration itself is bad, because you can have merit-based immigration where you select the people that come into your country that can actually be a benefit to your economy and your society.
Right. Right. Right.
And this, I mean, and this
You
is
know,
why. Yeah, sorry. Continue.
no, go right ahead. Finish your thought, please.
Oh, yeah, and then I also want to say that Alice Weidel herself. I mean, she's a leader of the AfD, and she's openly lesbian, right? And
Right. Right.
her partner is a woman from Sri Lanka. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I mean,
Yeah.
Elon Musk
Or
commented on this. How can it be a
yeah.
racist party? Yes.
Geert Wilders is half Indonesian. You know, you
Right,
see it all
exactly.
over the place. It's not an anti-migration movement or anti-foreigner movement. When all is said and done, it's an anti-liberal movement. We find liberal policies to have been an absolute mess, completely destroying social and cultural order. And we just want to return to something. I like. There was. Did I see? If I'm trying to remember it now, remember my German here. I thought I saw a banner for the AfD that said "Deutschland aber normal." Right,
There's the slogan.
Germany, but normal.
Exactly, right? Because Germany used to be normal, right? Like when I grew up and
Yeah,
like when I
right.
was a teenager in like the early 90s, right? And late 80s, is a completely different country, right? When I
Yeah,
went to school here. And pretty
yeah,
much the opinions o- that the AfD now espouses were completely mainstream back then, right? So I mean,
yeah,
what the
yeah,
AfD demands now in 2025 is pretty much the same that the Christian Democratic Union wanted 20 years ago.
right,
Just
right, right, right.
the Overton window has shifted so far left
Yeah,
that the most common sense demands are now considered like outrageously extremist, right? Like when you
right.
say like we should maybe close the borders, maybe we shouldn't let everybody in. Wouldn't that be a good idea? I mean, it's like so common
You,
sensical. It
you
makes it is
xenophobe, you
insane.
racist. Yeah,
It's
like
how
what?
can you possibly be opposed to this idea, right? But
Right.
that's how it is,
Well,
right? I mean, you say this, you're a
we're
brand.
facing it now. Yeah, we're facing it now with the Doge, and they're uncovering all of this waste, fraud, and abuse. And you have the Democrats literally defending waste, fraud, and abuse. It's insane. It's crazy. Constantine, I'd like to actually wrap up here by getting your take on the Russia-U.S. peace negotiations. And like we were talking about earlier before the interview, I mean that sort of literally. You and I have the exact same view on this. I read your Substack piece on it. I do think these negotiations are more a rapprochement between the Russian Federation and the United States, as both recognize these are both, as Dugan would call them, power blocks, mutually recognizing this new rising multipolar world. Fox News was talking about this last night, using the term multipolarity. You've been writing about this for decades. And the most glaring aspect of that meeting, of course, was who was not there. And that was a European delegation. They were not invited. No one. No one. So, do you see Riyadh as perhaps the single best proof of your thesis that was echoed by J.D. Vance's speech on the irrelevance of the EU and the liberal establishment in Europe?
Well, absolutely, I do. And not only weren't the Europeans not invited, but Ukraine was not invited either. Yes. So the whole meeting in Riyadh was about the conflict in Ukraine. And only two parties, actually three parties were present, right? I mean, it was the Americans, the Russians, and the Saudis, right, as mediators, basically. And I think it's very fitting, in my opinion, because the Ukraine conflict is basically a proxy war between the United States and the Russian Federation. And this is why, in my opinion, it makes perfect sense that only these two parties are present and only these two parties are negotiating a peace. And I think it was a previous administration, a Biden administration, who escalated the conflict. And I think the current administration, the Trump administration, is trying to de-escalate, right? And trying to find a sort of rapprochement with Russia, basically. And I think even a sort of maybe a partnership or collaboration in the future. I have this feeling that this is in the cards as well. And I also believe that it was only the United States and Russia that were present because really only the United States and Russia are truly sovereign poles in the multipolar
Yes.
world, right? I
Yes.
mean,
Yeah.
both of them are state civilizations, which
Yeah.
is basically a more technical term for empire, right?
Right.
So they're
Right.
both sort of imperial structures. The United States because of its size and influence, and also the Russian Federation because of its size and influence. And both of them are completely sovereign, completely free
Right.
states, also because both of them have nuclear capabilities and they have nuclear weapons. Because in this day and age, you cannot be a sovereign state or a sovereign civilization without nuclear weapons. I mean, it
Right.
doesn't work. I mean, there's a reason why Iraq was invaded and North Korea was never invaded,
Right.
right?
Right. Right.
So the Europeans, they're not really sovereign. We've discussed this before. They're basic. I mean, a lot of the European states are basically vassal states of the
Hmm.
United States. I mean, especially Germany. Yes, I think
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I think the only semi-sovereign country in Europe is France, in my opinion. Also because they have a lot of nuclear weapons and still have sort of an influence overseas, especially in Africa, and they have some other
Right.
overseas possessions. Um, but they're not strong enough, of
Yeah, I
course.
was just gonna say. I was
Stand
just
up
gonna say. I'm
against the
hearing my.
United
I'm
States,
hearing my.
right?
I'm hearing my son who loves multipolarity. I'm hearing him going. They're just not very good at it.
They're not, right? I mean, but because as we discussed earlier, the Europeans don't have an army, they don't have a military,
Right.
so they can't guarantee the Ukraine anything. They have nothing to bring to the table, basically. Yes.
Right.
So
Right.
and I think Trump knows this, and this is why he excluded them because they're basically useless. They shouldn't even
Yeah.
sit at the table. And I completely agree with the Trump administration. I should add, I also don't think the Europeans should participate.
Right. Right. It is. It is an astonishing. I mean, just that picture from Riyadh was an astonishing snapshot of multipolarity. It was pretty incredible. I mean, it was this wasn't the bipolar world of the United States and the Soviet Union. This was especially with Saudi Arabian mediators in between, members of BRICS. I mean, that was a very impressive picture of a multipolar world rising and both parties recognizing it. And I think in the end, when all said and done, that's really all Russia wanted. It's just they wanted this unipolar infested collective West to finally realize that world is over and a new civilizationalist world is rising. And seeing that picture definitely captured that moment. It's just incredible. We're living through it every day. I love how you say it. It's so hard to catch up. I feel I have to catch my breath every time I
Right.
go away from X and then I get back on, and all of a sudden all these new executive orders are flying out and new proclamations are being made and just incredible stuff. Gang, this is also amazing. I mean, we're certainly living in astonishing times. If you want to understand these times better, you have to click on the links below. I could not recommend Konstantin's books more. Two in particular, Esoteric Trumpism, and then his latest Multipolarity. They're magnificent reads. Click on the link below to get those. Also, make sure to join his equally enriching Substack, Euro-Siberia, of which I'm a subscriber, and you'll get his weekly commentary delivered straight to your email. You will not be disappointed. It is excellent, top-notch analysis. Well, Konstantin, I'm sure I'm going to see you again in a couple of weeks. I mean, we have so much to talk about. So thank you. All the best on the upcoming elections in Germany. Let's chat again very soon, because the world is changing like we never even imagined.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to talking again.
Absolutely, Konstantin. Thank you.